Businesses today face extreme data challenges. As data multiplies, so does the difficulty to catalog, control, and consume it, resulting in delayed analytic insights. Piecing together individual data products only adds to the complexity, and complexity is the biggest barrier to progress. It's time for an end-to-end data ops platform that provides a single pane of glass view of your data ecosystem. Become a data champion with Zaloni.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Track 5, Lessons Learned, Success Stories, Leadership in Action. And my name is Bob Audette. I'm a partner of data management at Guidehouse. A couple things. Today's session is going to be focused on how time series data can really bring immediate business impact to your company. And so what we'll do is it's going to explain how you can unlock that data from the initial ingestion stage all the way through the query stage to improve your business performance. A couple housekeeping items. So the session is going to be recorded. The materials from the session will be uploaded to the Whova app shortly thereafter that you can access. The actual video of this will be available 3 months later on the MIT CDO YouTube channel. Regarding questions for those in the room, because we do have virtual attendees, before you kind of chime in and pose your question, please raise your hand, have the mic in your hand, and then pose your question. Because otherwise those that are attending virtually will not be able to hear anything you say. So I appreciate you doing that. For those that are attending virtually, use the Whova app to pose your questions. For those in the room that want to use the Whova app to pose questions too, please do so. And I will briefly introduce Tony Ayaz, the CEO and board member of Scuba Analytics. He has over 20 years of experience, founder and executive focused on data analytics and platforms. He has extensive experience and execution on GTM strategies, globally, early stage investing, and scaling companies towards IPOs. So with that, I will hand it over to Tony.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Seems a little loud. I think you can hear me okay. But thanks for attending the last day of the session and giving me this opportunity, especially at 8:30 in the morning. So what we're going to talk today about is really the impact of time series data on your business decisions. And just a little bit background. I think you got my background and intro. But the company I'm representing is Scuba Analytics, and we've been around for roughly 7 years. And really focused on bringing critical decision making, with a no-code interface to across all of your time series data. So I'll talk about a little bit more about that in a second, but we have a very proven platform by robust customers that you can see here on the slide. And the key thing that a lot of our customers like is when you ask them a question, why do you really like the solution, is that because they can ask every single question about their customer within minutes. And so that's what I wanted to unlock and share our story today about why time series matters. And I know that the sessions and attending multiple of the sessions here today, there's a lot of talk about data, bringing data together, ETL, data warehouses. And we had a lot of questions at our booth in terms of, well, what do you guys do that's different than everybody else? And the first thing I'd just like to set up is that we are not a structured database or a data lake or data warehouse. There's a difference between time series data, that's every single click and interaction, and anything with a timestamp that accounts for time series data. So with that, if you're running a large organization where you have thousands or millions of subscribers and/or devices, you want to get real-time customer intelligence to make decisions. So example, I heard somebody yesterday say, well, I just bought a washer and dryer and I keep getting the promotions to buy another washer and dryer. I said that was probably set up from old data that was then retargeted to you probably weeks or months later, and it's still coming after you, versus having real-time information of actually seeing what ad campaigns or information or customers that you want to target. So it has a huge impact to your business. The other part of the conversation here has been around machine learning and AI, and we don't have the quote-unquote out-of-the-box magical machine learning solution. solution, but what we do in our customers that use us is that we make the data available for machine learning models. So we take this approach as a bring your own algorithm, and we'll give you access to live data, not sampled data, because we can do it at massive scale as well. And the other part of it is also looking at connected experiences. We all have mobile devices. You guys all know this story around how big IoT is going to be, from wearables to healthcare to other things. And these all need to be brought together in a unified view in order to get the complete view of your customer. So that's really why I think the impact of time series data is critical. And for those of you who are not familiar with time series data, this is what it looks like, right? In a sense, we're looking at things that have a timestamp and an actor or some unique identifier that we can correlate in massive amounts of data that's coming in real time. What it's not designed for is a lot of the solutions today where I hear a lot of folks that have made investments in cloud native applications, are in the cloud, and they're capturing everything so fast, but then they're dropping into a structured database and or data lake, then going back in and trying to fish that information out and try to put aggregated view or customer view together. That's not what we do, and that's not what it was designed for. So when we look at things, it's that you want the access to all sorts of the metadata of who, what, where, and why, and enable those questions in real time. There is a place for data warehouse. There is a place for data lakes. There's lots of structured data that's out there that you do need to manage and you need to analyze it, but there's a difference. So as we go through these slides, I just wanted to present this and make sure that everybody kind of understands it. And the other part of it is that it's all about real-time data, which means there has to be a lot of data coming into it. If you're trying to shortcut it, not have the complete picture or bringing subsets of the data, you're missing out on that critical customer information. And it also has to be schemaless, so schema and ingest. You can't define what event data looks like or how it should look like. You should have the ability and flexibility to look at it from all sorts of different angles, and that could come again from IoT devices, it could come from digital interactions, so forth. And the other key part of it is also it's getting information from a location perspective, and also driving innovation and seeing what things are being used in your product and not being used. What could be buggy, what you could debug, and proactively managing that. And so as a result of this is that, there's a lot of talk around silos, but I put this together as a disconnected revenue silos. Because you have all of this information, if you can see in these different avenues, each one of these systems that you guys have deployed in your environment are most likely cloud native. It's probably generating lots of different events, but you're not capturing them fast enough, right? You need to look at it from your product perspective. You need to look at it from your marketing and sales perspective. You need to look at it from your systems perspective. How can you aggregate and unify this information together to drive greater revenue? And especially with the move towards a lot of online RPAs, chat systems, this information is really critical to giving the right customer experience, and also important on really feeding your product teams to make sure that they're innovating and driving your business the right way. And as a result, if you don't have that together in a unified view, we're all looking at the static dashboards that are dated, as I referred to earlier with the washer and dryer example. You're looking at things that are not relevant. They're not updated. You're dealing with dashboards that are static. And so this is another critical problem, because you have all this fast-moving data, but then it gets slowed down to maybe 5 miles per hour and then presented in a static dashboard that you can't ask the questions of it. And so we think that the time has come, given that 20 plus years ago maybe, business intelligence and a lot of visualization tools that were developed haven't caught up with the data side, with the back end, to actually feed that information together. So you need to have that ability to have it all unified in a single view to start asking critical questions. And some of the key things that are from a complexity perspective, I mentioned data lakes and data warehouses. They weren't built for the fast-moving event data, right? If you're doing that, that's slowing down your business. Looking at it from a complexity perspective, well, there's a lot of predefined data models. So a lot of structured platforms can capture this data, but then you're predefining what the data should look like, which is therefore slowing the process down as well. And the other part of it is that it includes the more disconnect from the different silos, because you got to have the ability to ingest data on the fly without defining too much, and that can be across your various different cloud environments to the edge and IoT. And the last part is really around business users, right? Business users don't know complex query languages or Python or complex SQL queries. You want to give them the ability to have a no-code interface to ask questions and enable them to make sure that they can look at the business in all sorts of different angles and viewpoints to understand it. And so a lot of the solutions that are out there, either they're static or then it requires complex query languages, or maybe just creating tickets for somebody in data engineering to run the query, then present it back, which again, that lag creates a lot of huge impact for your business. And then typically we see this flow-driven data intelligence from the perspective of, again, somebody's collecting this information, there are tickets created, and that information could come in hours, it could come in days. The point is it's really slow. And so you want the ability to, get that data right the first time and not actually have to repeat this process over and over when you're trying to analyze data or make fast decisions. And the data is also important from the perspective of what's the quality of the data, how quickly I can access it, and what's the relevance. So seeing the context around that data. The key thing around looking at event data is that you can look at your business from all sorts of different scenarios. And as you're building machine learning models, it's nice to have that live data coming in versus sample data, because you can quickly measure those machine learning models and also see the impact of it so you can continuously improve your business. The areas that we really see the time series data it's going to impact is all your traditional things, and one thing in particular is the time to insights, right? This is a really critical thing that you should measure all of it, is how fast can you look at the data, how fast can a platform be deployed, and also how can you look at this from a privacy and risk perspective. So those of you that are either running a global business or looking to expand globally, GDPR 2.0, I'm throwing that up in air quotes, but it's going to change the dynamics of how you're running analytics. You can make tons of investments, but if you're not keeping your eye on the privacy factor, it's going to have a huge issue. And part of that is that you need to make sure that you control your data within your cloud and environment. So a lot of solutions that require you to send your data out, and then there's also manual processes that you actually have to do to make sure the data is encrypted, not encrypted, clean it up from a privacy and user perspective. So there's a lot of challenges around that. And one way to actually solve that problem is to make sure when you have a single unified platform that can bring this information, it gives you the ability to run this full audit trail and understand who's accessing the data, where the data is going, and how you want to actually how you want to implement governance around the data that's coming in. And also the cost and resources. I mean, there's a talent shortage, there's a talent war, however you want to look at it. But having the right level of resources available and keep adding to that is not a scalable fashion. So you need something that's very simple and actually can understand and be used by their digital natives or other folks that want to ask questions quickly and want to run the business faster as well. And then the last point is just in terms of growth and retention, right? I have lately, when you watch a lot of the publicly traded company CEOs, the first thing that comes up is our subscriber base went to X. We had this type of a customer experience. So it's impacting your bottom line or top line, whichever way you want to look at it, that you need to make sure that you're increasing your customers and you need to make sure that they're happy. You need to make sure that you're not losing them. And having complex solutions that are not real time and quick is going to impact your business. So what's the path forward? And what I kind of did with this slide is I started looking at some of the research across Gartner and various different sites, and from a chief data officer's perspective, I kind of highlighted some things that were really important to them. And so one of the things, as I mentioned earlier, is privacy in ESG. So if you guys are looking at ESG, right, the governance aspect impacts privacy. If you're looking at it from environmental impact, how can you measure your supply chain? All this information is going to be really critical in capturing that and making sure that you have a solution in place for that. Also, in this cookieless world, you have first-party data. So what's happening now is as you're spending money on customer experiences or ads to drive your business, you need to make sure that that's measured in real time. You need to make sure that that particular ad or Google spend that you're doing is measured and reaches its intended audience. And the only way you can do that is by looking at this information in real time and making sure you actually understand the customer and you understand the behavior of the customers as well. So this is really critical for marketing, and again, in this current economic cycle, you want to make sure that your dollars are spent the right way, and you're targeting folks in the right way with privacy in mind. The other side of it is looking at, there's a lot of challenges around AI and risk management, and it's around the having the data available versus sample data is going to be really critical around this, because you can see the behavioral attributes of what you're trying to build. You can look at how you want to measure these machine learning models and have your right level of KPIs. There's a lot of discussion on, I want to build machine learning, but it's off of static or older data. That's not going to be the right thing for your business, but you also want to make sure you're not risking it, because you don't want to expose the privacy or user information and so forth. In Europe, there's the GDPR 2.0, but for example, there's data sovereignty challenges as well. You can't take the data out of the country. So that's been established, it's been there for a while. Moving forward with things that may come down the road as well, you can't run the analytics on the data as well if you're sitting in Boston, for example. You need to have a team there. So you need to look at it from a 360-degree perspective of how you're going to deal with these challenges and to run and operate your business. The other part of it is really around data collaboration. So having context and then having the ability to share this information for various different stakeholders is really critical. So again, if you're running launching a product, for example, and a service, you need to make sure that all the relevant different parties across silos can see that information and react to it together, not wait days or weeks to actually get those static reports and see what the impact of it is. You need to measure this in real time and look at it from development teams all the way across to marketing teams that can actually make quicker decisions. And then the last point really on this is really around the 360-degree customer intelligence, right? This is all about customers, but a lot of customer experience and or solutions that have been out there are focused on specific stovepipes in information, such as surveys, or looking at things from surveys to other aspects of like things of only chat or text message, etc. These are all broken up in different pieces, and somebody has to bring that together. Well, a majority of this data is already timestamp or time series data that you can actually connect and unify across different silos and bring it together faster. So for us, what we really focus on is how do you go past this? How do you, what's next? And continuous intelligence, as you can see based on this definition, is that path forward in terms of getting your information in real time and making it that it's operational analytics connected to business decisions is how I look at it. You need to have the ability to look at a single view of bringing the data together. And again, I want to make sure that we're not confusing this between your structured data and other data that you have that doesn't change, that doesn't require updates continuously, but anything relating to your customer and their interactions is constantly changing. You have to know your customers really fast, and continuous intelligence is that one path forward. And based on this survey, there's a lot of organizations that are starting to look at this. Or, we've expanded globally, but everybody wants to have the right level of experiences. And the way you can have the best experience is having continuous intelligence with the right level of contextual data that can give your teams the right level of insights. From a platform perspective, right, there's a lot of solutions in there that are broken up where you have a visualization layer that you have to integrate with, and maybe it's a Tableau or a Power BI that you send the data into. And then you can maybe go leverage a query engine that can be fast or flexible. Then you have to then connect that to the visualization. And then on the back end, you may have various different systems that's collecting that information. Those are part of the reasons why you have the delay. In the world, from a Scuba perspective, we have a single unified platform that has the ability for you to take the real-time data on the back end, a fast integrated query engine with a no-code UI, all in a single solution that's fully managed, where you don't have to figure out how to run this from a data infrastructure perspective. You have to focus on what questions you want to ask for your business. And in some cases, we understand that a lot of customers have made massive investments in custom applications. Maybe it's for customer service or other departments. Well, you can also leverage this to send this information into the other systems and provide the intelligence in the custom application applications and other visualizations that you require as well. And the benefit of this from a privacy perspective is that you have a single point of entry for your data. It's being collected at its source with schema and ingest. You don't have to define the schema as the data is coming in. So therefore, it gives you full control over your data within your cloud or behind your firewall and your environment, that you can actually then put in the policy and enforcements from a governance perspective while the data is coming in, versus the manual efforts that it takes today to do that. And also enabling users to have a data dictionary within their fingertips as they're exploring the data that can point them to relevant data across various different silos, versus figuring out how to run different queries. This is all, again, looking at it from a no-code perspective across all time series data that can be analyzed. And the other approach that we're taking is that we see a lot of customers that have high-scale data don't want to send the data out and lose control over it. So they've all made massive investments in the cloud platform of choice, from AWS to Azure and or Google, for example, and they rather have the data within their environment and control it. And so we support that in that perspective, where we don't require you to move your data or send your data out of your environment, so you can have full control and governance over it as well. And the key to having this platform is also important because you have made investments in various other solutions. So a lot of CDPs that are out there, for example, are great. They connect to your CRM, they have some information, but they're not a data platform. And so there's a lot of questions that we've had this week from some folks at our booth that said, well, you sound like a CDP. And like, as a technologist, you can only do one or two things when you build your platform. So we've built it specifically to actually take this massive amount of data as a data platform, but we can also integrate with it. We can enrich those CDPs or various other platforms that need this real-time information to unify it in a much better way, because you don't want to do things that are replicating across different environments. And the reason why a lot of these different platforms that are out there, they're all critical, right? You're looking at it from a marketing platform perspective. You have CDPs, as I mentioned earlier, and then you also are looking at it how you can build custom applications rapidly, or embedded analytics as well for your customers. So that's going to be really critical to feeding at the right level of real-time intelligence. And I mentioned a few of these things before, but again, running this in a private SaaS perspective in your environment is going to be really critical, because it gives you that business flexibility as well as the data flexibility to control and understand where the data is going and have a full audit trail of what the processes and things that are happening with your environment. And so from again, ROI perspective here, right, it's all about looking at it from a real-time perspective to make faster business decisions. And there's a lot of things that have tried to attempt to democratize data, which I think we all agree it's democratized, but is it usable? Is it available? Can you get to it fast enough to make business decisions? And from a customer experience perspective, right, think of this as more of a platform play to actually understand your customer from product to systems to processes, and how you're going to keep them, how you're going to grow them, and how you're going to retain them. And that's a big shift that we see. So in this post-digital transformation era, as I like to call it, is we've all made these investments, but now we have to catch up to actually making this data available and making sure that people understand it and can leverage it. And the use cases can expand on this, right? You're looking at it as a customer perspective, a 360 degree. You're looking at it from a privacy, first party data perspective of how you can do more with your customer data and integrate all the digital footprints or interactions that they're making. And then also enabling your data science teams not to become data infrastructure experts or architects, but rather data scientists, and having access to the data and really pulling that information together to build the right level of different various machine learning models, and also improving your product and direction as well. So I'd like to just share some examples of some customers that have deployed our solution. And one of our larger customers is Microsoft. So in this, I'm sure you guys all had a Teams meeting at some point. So behind the scenes, we're looking at every single interaction across their millions of customers globally. They're looking at it from how do I measure the performance of the SLA and the KPIs, down to what things that in the panels of the product that you're clicking on are not maybe working out well, or they could improve, or make that experience better, all the way to marketing and campaign decisions that drive users to adopt their products. And this is done across trillions of different data points daily. This is being processed. And they have a subset of 60% of their users are business function related, and then the other chunk are product, and other folks are more on the marketing side. And so this is just one example of how fast they had to increase their business. If you think during COVID, you guys saw the stats from Zoom Info and Teams and all these business groups, they had to do this very fast, and they did this with us within, I can't specify specific dates, but they did it very rapidly with us. Let's just put it that. You guys saw the numbers of increase of people that are using online systems. And another angle of looking at this from a customer and marketing intelligence perspective is, you guys are familiar with Bleacher Report. They're owned by AT&T. And so one of the things that they like us for is that they can make critical real-time decisions on ad placement. So for example, if there's a Tom Brady article that's trending at that moment, they can see that has a heavy traffic in real time and change the ad placements to charge more for the ads or bring more relevant ads in real time, whereas before they had to do a post-game analysis of figuring out what actually worked, what drove their business. Now they can do this within a minute or two and understand how they can actually increase their revenue and drive better experiences. And also Salesforce, who's the king of customer platforms, right? They own Tableau. But we're leveraged across multiple different cloud environments there, from marketing to sales to services cloud, because we provide them that real-time intelligence on how they're increasing their subscribers, how are they interacting with it, and how they can get these real-time level reports across their various different product teams all the way up to the management teams that can make critical decisions around it. And they also leverage this for data science, because they're hiring more and more people that are digital natives, they're familiar with systems, and they just want to get in there and get their hands dirty with data and ask hard questions. And so they really love leveraging our platform for that, to actually get insights immediately and start using it from various different projects. Their machine learning teams are using it for model drift and analysis, measuring the machine learning models continuously, because we made it easier for them to leverage a no-code UI rather than try to figure out how to become an expert on various programming languages to extract this information as well. And the other one is part of Microsoft as well, but this is Yammer's. The key thing for them is like how fast they can actually go in there and ask questions. They look across various different data sets and continuously in their data science team, data analyst team, that can look this massive exploration across all these different data points within seconds. And the key thing around, again, I mentioned I don't want to sound too repetitive, but it's really about empowering your business to make these real-time decisions. And you have to start really thinking about how you're going to capture time series data, but not confusing it with structured data, right? There's two different angles. There's a lot of different solutions out there, but you need an integrated view for this time series data, because it's all about real time at massive scale and looking at this information. Otherwise, if it's stale or too late, it's going to impact your business. So with that, maybe I'll slow down to see if there's any questions here in the room or online.
Thank you for the talk. I think it's really interesting. A couple of quick questions. One, not all marketing or customer journey is all online. Some of it can be offline. So with this technology or with this and with the COVID, everything moving to more virtual space as well, is there a way or a use case that you're thinking about where you can bring some of that offline data or the relationship data, which now is moving to Zoom, getting into it integrated to get a much better picture of a complete customer journey? Second part, as you are ingesting the data real time, is there a scoring mechanism and tracking mechanism to understand that how warm or hot the prospect is getting in the sales funnel, so that the next action is going to result in a sale versus another event in such way?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first part is about, I think what you're referring to is more of the historical data. Can you ingest it with the real-time data and bring in this historical data that may be relational or offline? The answer is yes on that part. We can bring that data together and connect it to give you that perspective. It's going to be as good as that data that's being fed into our system that's being brought in, assuming that it has that timestamp and it has the customer or unique identifier that you can correlate and analyze it against. In terms of your second question, can you do some predictive outcomes and understand sales stages and how things are moving across the funnel? This is what I was referring to earlier, which is that the data science teams want to build the models, bringing in your own algorithm, right? Your business may be different of how you predict business scenarios and forecasts and stages of how fast they're going to go than in another business. So having this data readily available and applying your machine learning algorithm to this to actually pinpoint it, the 60–70% of the problem is going to be that data. That box going to be checked. The 30 to 40% on the other side is you have to build that model and understand it. So in the case of one of the customers I mentioned earlier, they're looking at their sales forecasting and CRM at a global level. So for example, what's the sales team doing in Europe versus in Asia versus in North America as the dealers are moving? What marketing campaigns are really working out for them? What ads actually had the right level of placement? And then how fast and frequent are they moving their stages? They can't do that if they don't have all those multiple touch points of bringing this information together. So we're more about making that data available for you to build a model. Any other questions?
Yeah, there's a couple online questions, so let me chime in with the first one. You touched upon this a little bit, Tony, but how do your privacy features compare to other CI tools in the space?
Okay. Yeah, so from a privacy perspective, the big chunk of it is really around that data collection being a central point of coming into a single system. Having that data and then seeing your users that are interacting gives you full audit capabilities to track that information. Where we're going moving forward past that is if you look at from differential privacy, if you're familiar with that, of how you can run analytics without exposing private user information. It's a really good method that was pushed out there, I believe, by Google. Problem with that, it didn't scale, it didn't connect with the data. So as we're ingesting that data, you have a central point, and then we're going to provide capabilities for you to run queries where you can set the policies of what the privacy measures are within your organization, and then enable the analytics without exposing the private user information from a PII perspective. So it's more about the platform, the mechanism that we allow you. We don't have the policy framework, for example, per country, per region. It's different. We can integrate and push that data, but the harder part is capturing at the massive level, so you're not doing a lot of manual work and updates on dealing with privacy and governance issues.
Okay. Next question was, and I think you also touched upon this a little bit, but what's the data ingestion process like in Scuba? And this one got a few votes from folks online. So can you maybe expand upon this a little bit from your presentation? So
we look at it from a data ingestion perspective is really going to the source and bringing the data in real time. So the requirements for us that we typically look at is, does it have a timestamp? Can we identify it to we call it as an actor, meaning a specific unique identifier? Those are the two key areas that we need to have, and then we take that on schema ingest of bringing that together and put it in one single column or database that you can then actually start analyzing the data. Typically, our customers, the deployers, start engaging with us. Depending on the size of the data, you're up within days. If not, if it's a small subset of data, we typically deal with larger customers, so it's not that easy to say you'll do it in 5 minutes, but it could, but if you have everything lined up from resources perspective, but in reality, you're talking within a week. So I know a lot of the folks out there might be thinking this is a heavy deployment, how am I gonna get this going? It's designed to really just get going, and in terms of the key challenges is, what do you wanna see, what do you wanna analyze within the data?
No, thank you. Great talk, actually. So I have a couple of questions. Number one is that we have, like, for example, like stock prices. You index historically all the stock prices. Say now Amazon, they do like stock splits. Now we have to go and update the data. And is it your system helps us to do that, or we have to inject, doing the stock splits back in, like, like now today, say for example, one stock is equal to like 10 stocks. You have to go and update all the historical ones. How do you do that actually?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, if I understand it correctly, that's going to be split on two different things. One is that specific custom information of each stock information. There might be some updates that's outside of our system. But on the same level, there might be an event generated from that one stock versus A versus B versus C that you can collect that information, and then that unique identifier or that piece that I mentioned earlier could be those individual stock ticker symbols or whatever they may be that you can correlate the data against, right? So we'll look at the events as it's changing, that if you identify these are the stocks that I care about, then you can look at the events coming off of those different systems, and let's call that more historical or that structured data that you want to integrate with that raw data that's coming in.
We have one other online question. Can you explain how you clean and screen the data quickly before it goes to business users? How do you ensure the data quality?
Yep. So we don't do anything from the perspective of cleaning the data as it's coming in, right? We're pointing and bringing the data and those interactions that are coming in. Now, with that said, when the data is in our system, that's where the governance comes in. So everyone has data infrastructure, data engineering teams that can administer the right level of protocols of who sees what access controls they have. Again, from a privacy perspective, what things do you want to lock down? What are part of your GDPR deletes, for example, that you want to set up in an automated fashion? So we bring that control back to the organization and let them automate that process of what they're doing in a unified view across all their data sets at once. So we're not per se cleaning the data manually as it's coming, because the value of the system is having that access readily available. Because if we slow it down, then we're doing what I mentioned earlier. We're just slowing down the process and not giving access to that raw and unstructured data. And then again, from a privacy perspective, we're helping protect the identify the PII user-specific informations that can protect your organization. But we do have all your enterprise security controls and other things from an enterprise class level that will give you that level of protection. No, one more.
I think it's fascinating and see multiple uses of it. But one thing that struck me when you said the conditions for ingesting data is the timestamp and an actor ID. And oftentimes in retail spaces, it's hard to identify an actor as they're coming in. Are there any things that you do as proxies to identify actors and that there is no deduplication or some of that stuff? When can you establish an actor ID if they don't have, or if they're a prospect that are coming in and cannot be identified in the internal systems?
This goes back to leveraging your first-party data. So I don't know if you've maybe invested in a CDP or customer data platforms that you can look at the 5 different identities of the customer, 5 different email addresses, right? CDPs are really good at creating a single unique identifier for that particular customer. Then the next level is you want to take that and start connecting it to their digital interactions. So in that scenario, it'll be more of that integration of where you have that specific customer identity, because again, from that cookieless world perspective, you got to leverage your existing database and then start capturing that and integrating what they're looking at, what's driving them to that traffic. So that's the piece that we'd probably approach it from that perspective.
But you don't create an ID by itself.
Well, I would say if the data if the question was, do you create the ID yourself? Yes, in that scenario, if it's a very specific custom application, we get that sometimes there's challenges. We can work with you at a services level to actually help you identify what those unique identifiers are if you don't have anything captured, or we can integrate with a tool that might have captured that data as well from an API perspective. But I would call that more of a little bit more of a customization that we would do and work with our customers. Yep. Yep. All right, so I get one more thing. So whether it's in the audience, we can maybe figure out a way to ship this to you, or for more specifically for the folks in the room. if somebody can throw out a really good use case that you can apply time series data to make sure you're listening or care about what I said, and if you cannot give an interesting use case, we have a nice fancy branded iWatch for you that we can hand out in the room. So who would like to present a potential use case that could benefit their business?
Use case or problem?
Problem or use case?
Right? How do you, sorry, thank you.
And sorry, for disclaimer, I'm going to let the audience in the room here decide, so you have to raise your hand on which one you like. Okay.
But, so thank you. So the global time, for example, you have the time differences, all the time updating the times and all historically, if you're doing an analysis on so-and-so day at the so-and-so time, how do you update across the world, say in the morning at 4 o'clock, and today it can be 22nd, and then now in India it is already they move ahead of us. How do you get that analysis and all
It's a good one. All right. We have any others?
I can give an example, but I don't need to watch
Okay.
Yeah, I think looking at the real timeness of this, probably there is a concept of digital twinning, especially in the supply chain as well as the trucking company and the logistics company, where they create a real-time twin of all the data that is being collected in the real world to just make a lot more predictions about should we change the way the truck is operating or should we bring it for maintenance or some of that stuff. So digital twinning is a great example of using this kind of real-time data.
It's a great one. Anybody online got one, or?
Take a look. Nothing.
All right. Well, I think both of those were really great examples. In particular, again, global data I don't know which company says it, but business moves at the speed of light, right? So you got to keep up with that. And from a digital twins perspective, completely agree from that perspective, and that also impacts your ESG rating, right? So by not only improving your business impact, if you're publicly traded, you can improve and share that information on what you're doing and provide that intelligence as well as how you're impacting and get better ESG scoring as well from a business perspective. So great questions, but neither one of you want to watch? All right. Well, it's up here if you would like it. Thank you very much for...
I can take it if nobody's taking it.
I'll give it to you. There you go.
That might be useful to you.
But yeah, thank you for your time. If you have any follow-up questions, there's my email address, or you can contact our team. But appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for coming. And thanks for those online as well.
Great job, Tony.